you have to be confident in this in sports, right? You have to have this I'm unbeatable mentality, especially baseball will wear you down. Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with Patrick Mooney. We're your Cubs beat writers over at The Athletic, and we're talking Cubs post-trade deadline. Patrick, we did a quick wrap-up last night, and now let's do a little bit more of a big picture, more overview of what we can expect going forward, what we need to see going forward, what Jed Hoyer needs to see going forward. I think this is the reason to watch games going forward these next 2 months is to figure out what they have, what Jed Hoyer can sell to Tom Ricketts. He's going to be sitting in front of us 2 months from now talking about the offseason and the season that was and how he's going to make this team better and not disappoint in 2025 like they did in 2024. How is he going to, what does he need to see happen so he has a good sell to Tom Ricketts to say, invest in me, invest in this team? I think that's the question we need to answer and what we'll be watching for over the next 2 months.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think there's going to be a lot of ground to cover here. I think I would start with one, just because I'm thinking of him, because I'm writing about him, because we talked to him last night, is Cody Bellinger. Like, is he going to opt in for next year? He hit that home run last night. He's still a good, well-rounded player, but he hasn't been a star. He hasn't been as healthy as he would have liked to have been so far this season. And kind of the contours of this season going into it was, the Cubs were not built to sell. They were itching to buy, and like neither one of those things happened. And the assumption was that Cody Bellinger would opt out of his contract after this season. And that is now a little bit more of a question mark. And I think those two things kind of tell you a lot of what you need to know about this team right now. They're just kind of stuck in the middle.
That home run, I just had to bring it up because I was watching from home, and that home run is like a home run in like 5 ballparks. It's just that was just like so prototypical Cody Bellinger 2023 home run.
Yeah.
and I mean, he needs more of those, right? To opt out. Like that's big for him. And I think that's a good question as far as what's his future and what's if he opts in. I don't think it'd be a disaster because he's a quality player, and the Cubs
Agreed.
Like people can talk about the money all they want. The Cubs can handle that. You said it last episode. We need to stop worrying about the Cubs' money. Like, just spend.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care that he costs $30 million. The teams like the Cubs need to be able to overcome that if he's not worth $30 million, right? I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't matter. You need to win, and you need to figure out ways to win. And Cody Bellinger can be worth $30 million. So maybe opting in would be a good thing for the Cubs if he has a monster season. It gives them a lot of options, right? It would give them a lot of options, just like Paredes gives them options of how to kind of build a team. And you don't need to. I think it would be overthinking it to kind of to think that they can't outspend that contract, if that makes sense, right? I think a big thing that we need to watch, and I don't think it should change any thinking going into the offseason.
Okay.
Outside of maybe like the second, how many catchers you need to get, but it's Miguel Amaya's performance.
Yeah.
I think you need to be aggressive in the offseason to find a catcher. I think it's absolutely necessary. It is really hard to find a catcher. I don't know how you do it, to be honest. Like you can find a veteran, probably. I don't have the free agent list in front of me. It is really hard.
I got it up here. I mean, you could Danny Jansen. I think you might be a little bit curious of, is that going to get into a range that is very uncomfortable. I'm thinking of the Yasmani Grandal type of deal for a guy who's like, to my understanding, is like a good presence, but not necessarily like a top shelf defensive catcher, right?
Right.
You've got Carson Kelly, James Can.
None of these
You
guys
got
are
the
moving the
defense at
needle.
first. Austin
Yeah.
Hedges,
Yeah.
Noah, Thomas Nito, Narvaez. I mean, this is not.
Yeah. This is what they have. A lot of what they have. It doesn't change much. Danny Jansen's interesting. He'd probably be league average. But I think you need to watch for what Miguel Amaya does. And are these changes legit at the plate? How is he handling the pitching staff? How is he handling just catching in general? All the soft factors, all those things matter, because whether he's the starter or the backup next year, you need to know what he can do and how aggressively you need to pursue catching as a position as a whole. I think it's possible he goes into next season as a starter just because it's so hard to get catching. I think they'd prefer to find a legit starter. I don't know where that guy comes from. That's the question, right? Like, who's giving up a young catcher? Like who's trading that guy? The Cubs have a really strong system. Is there a team with a starting catcher that has the top catching prospect as well? Something like that. That's willing to kind of that's heading towards a rebuild or willing to go in that direction. Things like that are what they're going to have to look for, because it may take like a Michael Bush situation to address this need, because I don't know how you fix it, but it needs to be addressed. But it also, I think, is important over the next 2 months to see what Miguel Amaya is doing and how he performs.
No doubt. I think that and the star hitters probably, right at the top of the list here. Diaz from the Rockies, a name that had been mentioned when it looked like Cubs were buyers, is another guy in that mix. Maybe, like you said, do some sort of timeshare and raise the floor a little bit. But like you said, nothing that really moves the needle. I know you're always curious about pitching. I just pulled up here the lengthy Cubs on injured list section of the game notes. Not sure who we're going to see back. Not sure how much you can bank on like anything that you really see once a team is sort of out of it and playing out the string to an extent. But like, Albert Alzolay was supposed to get a second opinion yesterday in Chicago. We had not received word yet, but it was described as a significant setback, and I'm not really expecting him back this year. That's just my gut feel, or just kind of, institutional read on how these things usually go for injured pitchers in August. But is Jordan Wicks a guy you can count on? What's up with Ben Brown? Can anyone take an opportunity and run with it the way that Justin Steele did after the 2021 deadline? You mentioned Javier Assad last night, or a previous show, of guy who sort of looks like he's wearing down. And that, I think, is going to be interesting, because the Cubs are very good at kind of talking up their pitching and their depth and kind of popping guys onto the radar. But how many are going to stick the way that, to his credit, Mark Leiter Jr. did for years? He was just kind of a guy off the scrap heap who really made himself into a guy that the Yankees wanted in a World Series or bust year. Like, who is going to emerge from this as the Cubs manage the innings over the last 2 months?
Yeah, and these injuries have lingered too. I mean, each one of them has been like, we're not that concerned. Outside of Leiter, who they said they weren't concerned, and they were right. Every single one has been worse than expected. Yency Almonte was supposed to be a minimum stay, turns into surgery. Hayden Wisniewski is delayed. I don't think it's serious yet, but it's not a minimum stay. Wicks, Alzolay. Well, Alzolay, yeah, that became more serious
That was
as it.
setback.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Ben Brown, we got good news on this, right?
right. And here we are, still like it's like bullpens, right? Has he faced live hitters? Has he like none of that stuff has happened? It's taking a lot longer for these guys to come back, and I understand you don't. I'm not saying they should be rushing them. I'm just saying these injuries are keeping us from getting information, keeping more importantly Jed Hoyer from getting information that is really important for him to be able to do his job in the winter. He needs nearly a full 2 months to see what these guys are. They're not going to be back until earliest mid-August. I think both of them, if it'll say on when they're eligible to return, right? I think both of them, like Wicks and Brown, are like mid-August. So this is a problem for them, where they need more information from these guys and to have some sort of idea of what they can be. And even then, we saw it with Steele in 2022, right? That's when they put him in the rotation. It took him a month and a half to become a decent starter. Yeah. I remember there was talk of like, should he be removed from the rotation? And obviously they stuck with him. I mean, that was a perfect season to kind of do that. Do you have that kind of patience anymore? Can you afford to have that type of patience? So it's
probably
critical.
Not.
No.
This is your shot.
Yeah. So they gotta see what they have with these guys over the next 2 months. I think, I think some young guys. I'm very curious. It like with the prospects, who they're going to be aggressive with, who they actually call up, if anyone. And the three names that I'm going to go back to are, so Canario, our buddy Jesse Rogers. He's not going to get his Canario wish. I think he reported Canario was out 6 weeks with his hamstring injury.
Okay.
So that's a problem there. Owen Casey, Moises Ballesteros, and Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw's destroying AA. I would think that AAA is close, right?
It would have to be.
Yeah, I don't know if that means the big leagues is in his future in September, because the AAA season is longer now, and it goes deeper into September than it used to.
And the 40-man considerations as well.
Right. I mean, if they think it's worthwhile to get him up and get some time, then they do that. But I think he's the longest shot of that three. Moises Ballesteros has like a league average OPS at AAA right now. He got off really hot. He's cooled down. And this is what happens. This is the point of not just like a hot 2 week stretch saying, call the guy up. And I know everybody wants to do that, but like he needs to get back to hitting the ball hard and get that OPS back up. And I'm not, this isn't me voicing concern about him. It's just like he hit a tiny rut and now he's league average instead of destroying the league. Owen Casey's done that. He's gone through the tiny ruts. He's hit, he's been in AAA all season. And he's hit his low points and he's worked through them. And I think if there's anyone of that three, I think it'd be interesting to see Owen Casey up in the big leagues at some point this season. His numbers aren't completely destroying AAA, but they've consistently pushed him throughout his time with the Cubs. They've been aggressive with assignments. They have trusted that he can handle failure and push through it mentally and make the adjustments. They've done that. I'm sure you talked to the kid in spring training. I did as well. Very confident in himself, carries himself with he has very high expectations, and he carries himself in a way that I can do this. I remember I asked him, it's like, is there any one hitting coach that you'd point to that's helped you a lot? He's like, they're all great. They're all really good. He's like, but everything I've accomplished, it's me.
That's awesome.
And I love that. And
Yeah.
I mean, he's not ripping the hitting coaches. They guide him, they give him advice, but he's putting in the work, he's doing it all. And that's how the mentality you have to have. Like, I can do this. This is me. This is how I get here. And that's fine. Like, yeah, you have help along the way, but you have to be confident in this, in sports, right? You have to have this I'm unbeatable mentality. Otherwise this game, especially baseball, will wear you down. I'd like to see him at some point. I think of those three that I mentioned, of the position players, of the quote unquote impactful prospects, I'm sure there's depth pieces that are worth a look, that could help the bench or something like that. I think that's the guy you have to look at. A lefty power bat, that's interesting on its own. So Owen Casey has elite exit velocities, things like that, if you want to nerd out on that stuff. But he's an intriguing player that could give some answers for next year, have some impact. I mean, what if he's a 30 homer rookie next year? You'd take that, right? And I don't think that's crazy when you have that type of power.
What if he hits 40? What if he hits 50 home runs?
That's the type of surprise they need, right?
Why are you ripping Cubs prospects? They need only 30 home runs next season. The expectations that await young Owen.
Yeah, now put too high of expectations. I'm not sure if he's even had 20 in the minors. Jeez, that was unfair. So yeah, no, I'm curious about the prospect. He had 22 last year at AA. So putting 30 on him for his rookie season in the big leagues is probably a little unfair.
Well, I don't see him on the 40 man, but I'd imagine he may have to be added this offseason.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I'm 99% sure he has to be
but
added.
I mean, either way, you're hitting like that at AAA. Like, it's not as if the Cubs offense is firing on all cylinders to such an extent that there's absolutely no room for anyone else to make their way in there. And yeah, I think that's good context on Moises and Shaw. Hard to see them like forcing guys onto 40 man at this point. And I think that's been, one of the underwhelming parts of this year, to be honest. Like, Shota and Michael Busch are two of the best rookies in the National League, no doubt. That's super important. But in terms of like other kind of young guys coming up, like nothing that really kind of blew us away this year. And we'll see what changes over the final 2 months. And, I want to see, I'm curious how Craig Counsell kind of takes in these last 2 months. Like, what are we going to learn about him during this? He hasn't really changed all that much, but our buddy Jesse Rogers, when he was on while you were on vacation recently, Sahadev, he had a good way of putting it. He said he felt that Counsell's been in kind of observation mode this year, as kind of a, hey, get everything in, not overreact. And, we're just talking about injuries. I think that is part of a larger conversation of like baseball operations and what Craig Counsell wants done here. I'm not blaming trainers. I'm not blaming coaches, but like when the team has underperformed to this degree, I think almost everything is on the table, right? I mean,
yep.
It's been such a weird confluence of events. I was talking to a longtime baseball official recently who said, in his experience, like the one truism was, well, if you've got a good rotation, you've got a chance, right? I mean, that's kind of like a fundamental thing that has not come true this year at all. And to see this team in last place on the last day of July with some awesome pitchers, some pretty good depth is kind of mind-boggling. And that's why I think we'll be kind of covering a lot of these, like, what's the internal shuffling or shakeup going to be? That's something that I don't think we're going to get, in August, but I do think that's something that's going to have to be on our radar here very soon.
Yeah, no, I agree with Jesse on the observation mode comment. I think that's accurate. I think he is taking a lot in, and I think that's important. Now, I think some things have changed with the way baseball is allows front offices don't like when someone leaves for another org. They don't like people being taken from their org. It's like one guy can come and that's it.
Yeah.
And it used to be like you have a year, and then you can maybe take more guys. Now it's longer. Like I'm pretty sure, like there was some agreement that Carter Hawkins couldn't pull guys from the Guardians for multiple years.
Okay.
There's I'm pretty sure something is similar with Milwaukee and Counsell. I don't think he can, unless it's a very clear upgrade, like very clear promotion, things like that. It's hard to get guys to come from the previous organization. There's a lot of, it's just like, I'm not sure if it's formal or as much as just like really frowned upon and it'll cause issues. But it's hard to pry guys away nowadays. It's not how it used to be, unless they're just like, yeah, take whoever you want, right?
Well,
like,
I think the difference might have been, I'm sure Carter, as a condition for interviewing for a clear promotion, maybe there was some sort of thing, but Counsell as a free agent, I think it was more Milwaukee was really chapped at how that all went. They seemed to make an effort to snap up all those coaches and make sure they were there for the press conference when Pat Murphy was elevated. So I think you're right. I am curious to see like what happens there, because this is largely not Craig's coaching staff, and I think there's lots of talent on that staff who've done good things, and you can make the case for a lot of retentions, but for the most part, you had a coaching staff that was signed up to work with David Ross this year. Like for the most part, it's kind of like an end of October contract cycle. Like there were guys, it was supposed to be David Ross's staff, right?
Right.
And he's fired a couple of days later, and then Counsell's kind of coming in. He got one or two guys in that are, his sort of hires, and they had made some changes before the Ross Counsell switch went down. But yeah, like how is Counsell going to make his mark on this team? Because
so I think Sahadev safe, right? Pitching has been good, and he's highly respected, liked by players, and I think I don't want to make assumptions, right? Because like these are the types of things, but that seems like someone that's safe. Counsell has often goes out of his way to praise Ryan Flaherty. This is a new relationship. This is a guy that he wasn't with previously, and now is on his staff. And I think Flaherty has had a positive impact in certain ways, but also we just don't know what his future holds, because he wants to be a manager. Like I think that's obvious. So who knows if he moves on. I think pretty much everything else is just like, I don't know. I'm not going to make any assumptions. The offense has been bad enough that we have to wonder what happens on the coaching staff, because it's just the reality of baseball. Do I think it's fair? Do I think it's the right move? I don't know.
One of the worst jobs in baseball.
It's not always fair. That's just the way it is. As far as I think it's important to take in what Counsell has to say. We've talked a lot about Milwaukee and that organization. It is a good, strong, well-run organization. He has been a part of it for over a decade. He has seen how things work. It is really important if he sees things that maybe they're not awful, but he's like, I think this can be run better. I think, here are the types of moves I think we can make. Here are the types of changes in player development, in strength and conditioning, with the training staff, with the coaching staff, whatever it may be. These are the places that he has expertise in. These are the places he's observed. These are the areas that he has, experience with with a successful organization. Why would you not take his opinion and weigh it heavily? Like there are a few organizations that stand out in baseball that aren't doing it just purely with money, and Milwaukee is one of them, right? So you have to respect it. You have to listen to him. There's a reason you didn't he say like don't hire me if you just don't just pay me to run a bullpen. So there's more here. He has more to give to this organization. I think that's spot on. I think this one is huge, and I think I'm seeing signs of better things offensively. Results aren't fully there, but I feel like Pete Crow-Armstrong is looking a little calmer at the plate. He's hitting the ball harder, more often, not swinging. Like it's only been like a week of that, but but it just looks so much better, because there was a point in time with a week ago where I was like, come on, you have to settle down at the plate. You cannot try and swing for the fences. You cannot swing at every pitch. It's a little calmer. It seems like he's like, hopefully these next 2 months we get he doesn't have to rip the cover off the ball. If he is a league average hitter with that defense, that is a special player. That is a player that's going to help you win a lot of games. So I want to see calmer at bats. I want to see the line drives. Yesterday, I want to say like hard ground ball up the middle. Ellie De La Cruz was there, right? Pete probably wanted to hit on that one. A few hard line drives. There was one that I was kind of writing at the time and half paying attention, and I saw Boog's voice kind of elevated, and I thought he had hit a home run, but it was just driven to the warning track. But but yeah, I want to see more of that. Just good at
how many stadiums would that have been? Like a ball. Stadiums.
We got I think that's zero. That was zero. If it's not a home run in Cincinnati, you're probably not getting it many other places. I just think it's so important to see quality at bats from him. I don't even need to see elite results. I'd like to see some results, but I don't need him to like be 50 points above league average. I need quality at bats, not swinging out of his shoes, not chasing every slider down and in. I actually think he's been better when it comes to chasing the fastball up. But that's those sliders. My Lord, he's just if he can lay off those and start swinging at strikes and putting them in play hard, I think that's a step forward, and that makes you feel better about next season with regards to Pete Crow-Armstrong.
Yeah, and I think pre-show we had talked about building towards this, that I think obviously Jed Hoyer is going to be a huge focus, even more than he normally is. And it's hard to gauge things off of Zoom, but he seemed pretty relaxed and calm and not at all defensive. I think the Paredes trade helps in that regard. If you remember from 21, just how like frazzled he was, I think our buddy Paul Sullivan had described him looking like it was a hostage video or something like that. A couple days and had very little sleep. Like he seemed pretty relaxed and rested, relatively speaking here. And look, the team is not good. It's the team he assembled, so certainly he's going to be feeling a lot of heat, even internally. Like as we've said before, the Cubs don't spend to the nth degree, and we both think they could do more in that regard. But this has been a sufficient payroll to go win this division, at least. Certainly when you look at what other teams are doing across the league. And I think it's an issue when you see like certain teams kind of coming on, like, David Stearns came in and, signed a couple like short-term guys and like kind of helped get the Mets back in it when they were looking like they were sellers early on. You see kind of how the Cubs are drifting towards that Giants territory, where it's kind of like just in the middle with like pieces and kind of stuck, not very dynamic, but not bottoming out. Like it's where there's a lot of heat on that group in San Francisco, and so maybe I am too close to this. I feel like the circumstances in which Jed took over this job, I think, were extremely difficult. It looks really bad when Pete Crow is kind of the only guy from that 21 sell-off on our radar screens right now. And like we said, maybe Alcantara changes that over time. But like the way this team is built, the way it's shown out this year just does not look good. There's not a whole lot of like faith and trust right now, just from our interactions or, on social media, the comment section, just people coming up to us during our everyday life. Like the Cubs are not the same thing that they were, just the buzz, the energy. They still get 40,000 at Wrigley, and it's a great place to spend an afternoon. And like the team's not terrible, but in terms of like oh wow, you got to see this Cubs player. Like, oh, did you see this last night in the Cubs game? Or, oh man, I can't wait until this matchup. Whatever. Like there hasn't been nearly enough of that, and that this has gone on long enough that it's gonna force Jed out of his comfort zone, I would imagine.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's undeniable. I think we've brought it up in multiple podcasts. He's on the hot seat. I don't think we have to, tiptoe around that. There's a reason he's been asked those questions. I understand his answer. He can't make moves with that in mind. I'm more curious if he agrees that he's on the hot seat. You don't make moves with that in mind. I get that, but you do need to have the idea of, I mean, he said it. There's a reason he's trying to win for 2025. He's not trying to build a deep farm system anymore. He has that. It's time to win. So he has to be thinking about 2025. There's no long-term plan unless you win now. Because
that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Plan if you're not winning now. I do think that he gets credit in my eyes for the Paredes trade, in that I think we both agreed we just didn't see that type of creativity needed for that. We weren't expecting him to pull off a creative move like that. I think that's more of that is what's needed. It needs to happen. I think he's well aware of that. I think he was aggressive to try and do more of that this deadline. He couldn't pull off more, but I think he wanted more young talent that could help the team now, that has shown they could help teams, right? He's looking for that. I think that's going to be his focus this winter. We will see how much money they spend. I do think these next 2 months are going to dictate some of that, unfortunately.
It can help.
I think it's a bad way to go about business as far as ownership goes. Like, well, we only won 75 games. I'm not spending a ton of money to make us an 80-win team. If we win 82 games, I'll spend more money to make us an 88-win team. I don't like that thinking. I think you need to get your payroll to a certain level at all times, and then you need to be aggressive when moments call for it, and when opportunities arise. You can't just say like, well, this is like, what's the point? Then you're selling your fans short. And I just don't. It doesn't make sense, because the argument coming off 2018, the argument coming off 2018 is, we won 95 games. Why do I need to spend money? So what is it? Like either way. So you don't spend money when you lose games. You don't spend money when you win too many games. Like what's the sweet spot to spend money? Only when you win 83 games, and they didn't even spend that much money this past offseason. So I hope that's not how it plays out, because that would be unfortunate for the fan base. But it's obvious that that's a big storyline over the next 2 months, and it'll likely be over the winter, because I don't think, when I say he's on the hot seat, I don't think he's getting fired after this season. It would be weird to allow him to trade someone like Christopher Morel to go out and acquire Isaac Paredes and then fire him. I mean, maybe it still happens, maybe, but I just don't. It just
I
seems
just think
like
he's done largely what ownership wants. Hasn't checked every single box, but in terms of the plan that was agreed to, like, this is sort of what they want. It hasn't come to fruition this season, but when you talk about creative, the Michael Busch trade is another good example of, like, if you can stack up a couple more like that and tighten up some areas, and I don't know. I think just after the trade deadline, my brain is kind of like turning off and kind of conjuring up all these different scenarios. I don't know. It makes me think of what Theo said. Like, we just need to be right. Like,
yeah,
to win. Like, that is just sometimes that is kind of a very Counsell like view of just trying to put things in the most like simple terms. And I think it very much relates to this situation here.
Yep. I totally agree. More creativity and be right with those decisions. That's Jed's task going forward. He has 2 months to evaluate this team. I think it may give him some answers, but I don't think it's going to drastically change a lot of what he needs to do. He knows what he needs to do. He just needs a little more information to feel comfortable in some areas. Otherwise, he has a daunting task, because he has to. There's no more patience. Patience ran out for fans a while ago, but for the people that are making the decisions, I think they're ready to. They're like, it's time to put up or shut up, and it's time to deliver wins. This is a team that, one of the most money-making franchises in sports, that they need to start winning games. It can't be. What is it now? We're running on 5 years, 2008, 6 years since a full season with playoffs, and since 2017 since a playoff win. That doesn't work. That's not acceptable. So they gotta get back on track and figure things out. That's the task at hand. All right, that's Northside territory. Thanks for listening, everyone. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, and make sure to subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I will be covering the Cubs, and on top of all those topics for you for the final 2 months of the season, and obviously a critical offseason yet again. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, everyone.